Hi, my name is Eileen Mostricht, and today I wanted to talk about the question of whether or not you can use a Ladybird deed for your rental real estate. So recall in a recent video, I talked about using a Ladybird deed for your homestead. The short answer is that yes, in Florida, you can use a Ladybird deed for your rental real estate. And recall that a Ladybird deed is a pay on death deed. In the deed itself, you name remainder beneficiaries. It can be one person or more than one person. And when you pass away, they will automatically own the property. It is an alternative to doing a trust. Many people do trusts in order to avoid probate, but in Florida, for your real estate, you can avoid probate with a Ladybird deed. So with the rental real estate, the issue, while you can use the Ladybird deed, the issue that comes up is liability. So if you are renting to, for example, if you've got a townhouse in Gainesville and you're renting it out to college students who are throwing keg parties every Friday night and doing all the crazy things that we did in college, there might be some exposure there, some risk exposure. And as we all know, it's a very litigious society. And if somebody gets hurt, the first thing that they're going to do is come after the owner or the owner's insurance policy to try to get some recovery. So, and if you have that rental real estate that's just sitting there and they sue you and they get a really big judgment, they actually could go to some of your other assets as well to try to recover. So what some people will do is they'll put that rental real estate into a limited liability company, and then the shell kind of protects that real estate. So if they sue you based on an injury that occurs on that property, then the most that they can get is the property. That's the extent of what they could recover from. They can't go outside of that LLC. So that's a topic for another day. But the point is that yes, you can use the Ladybird deed for your rental real estate. It's just you're going to have to do kind of an analysis of the risk benefit analysis. Do you rent to? Is it a condo or a house or a townhouse that you've got a long-term renter that, it's not college students. It's just maybe a couple that have their children are gone. They live a pretty low-key life. Maybe that's a lower risk situation and you would feel better about using a Ladybird deed in that situation. But if you are going to use a Ladybird deed for your rental real estate, I do recommend layering your insurance to protect you from anything that comes up from a liability perspective. And what that means is it's a good idea to require the tenant to have their own, it's called an HO4, it's a renter's policy. And in that policy, they can get some coverage for their personal property, which is great. But the bigger issue for you is that they can get liability coverage, usually up to $100,000. And then that will be a first layer of protection if somebody sues. They'll have to go to that homeowner's or that renter's policy. And that is a buffer between that person who's filing the lawsuit and you. And then of course you will have your own policy. It's usually called a dwelling policy or an HO6 where you're not living there, but you own the property. So you'll have some liability protection there. So that's another layer. And then I would highly recommend getting an umbrella policy. If you're gonna have rental real estate, I highly recommend an umbrella policy, which would be another layer of protection. And usually you can get like $1 million policy it really does not cost that much. So the tenants would have their own policy. That's one layer of protection. Then you are gonna have your own policy on that property, which will have liability protection. And then you're gonna have the umbrella policy. So if you're gonna do the Ladybird deed on rental real estate, get that insurance in place too.